So one of the biggest topics right now in video gaming is, of course, the $80 standard edition video game. Now, during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct presentation, we of course got a look at Mario Kart World, and it looked really cool. I'm sure many people, myself included, thought, okay, this might be a $70 game, you know? Nintendo did dip their toes into the well of $70 games with Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch 1, a Mario Kart game, probably, you know, it's an upper echelon tier game in terms of Nintendo's eyes, at least in terms of sales. Look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's sales on the Nintendo Switch at $60, so yeah, maybe they'll bump this up to $70, but then we quickly learned, no, it's an $80 baseline price for this game. And I say baseline because there could be paid DLC that comes out for it. There could be microtransactions that come out for it. I know people like to think that Nintendo is never going to do microtransactions in games like this, but I think the door of opportunity is potentially open, especially with a game like Mario Kart, when you look at how much DLC Mario Kart 8 Deluxe ended up getting, that of course did cost money unless you were a Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack member. Then of course we had Xbox start to announce that they're going to be doing $80 games, and people immediately blamed Nintendo for that, which I think is one of the dumbest things in the world. Like, it doesn't work like that. This wasn't some knee-jerk reaction done by Microsoft because, oh, well, Nintendo announced an $80 game, now we can do it. I'm sure they were just as surprised as all of us were when they found out Mario Kart World was going to be an $80 game, and of course they are now introducing $80 games towards the end of the year. Is that a direct response to what Nintendo did? No, I think it's just circumstantial, and it's something that the video game industry has been pushing forward to with these higher game prices because they want more money from you. It is a business, after all, not a video game friendship. Sony, of course, chilling, looking like, you know, oh, we haven't changed prices in the United States yet. We're the good guys, but it's not a matter of if they're going to, it's a matter of when they're going to. And yes, they are going to probably start talking about $80 games. I would not be surprised if Ghost of Yotei ends up being $80. I know right now it has been announced as a $70 version for the baseline game and then a digital deluxe for $80. I think that's going to end up changing. I honestly think the game will end up being $80, or at the very least, that will be the final sort of $70 game. That's a big title that we see from Sony, and they will also be moving to $80. PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro, those consoles are going up in price as well. So if you really want one, you better buy one now. But bringing it all back full circle, all of this is encompassing on additional pressure on consumers because the $80 game is a pretty expensive investment. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's only $10 more than a $70 game, but at least with a game like that's on Xbox, for instance, you could play it on Game Pass. If you would rather do that instead of buying multiple games for $70, you know, say you're buying one game a month at $70 or $80, Game Pass is less than that. With a PlayStation game, you can at least anticipate some sales happening for that. With Nintendo Switch 2 and first-party titles, sales are going to be much less frequent than on the other platforms. That's how it has been for Nintendo. That's how it was on the Nintendo Switch. Gone are the days of Player's Choice and Platinum Hits and Greatest Hits where you could get highly successful games at discounted prices brand new. No. It's all about the capital. It's all about the money. It's all about the dollar bill because these video game companies, they need your money, even though Nintendo pocketed $4 billion in revenue last year. But we have an interesting update here on the $80 Switch 2 game scenario. Now, this is coming to us from Stealth via a Brazilian interview that was done with Doug Bowser. Now, this interview was actually done a couple of weeks ago, but it hasn't really been making the rounds because I guess translation issues or something like that. This is coming to us from an interview done by Folha de São Paulo, obviously very Brazilian. I am a fan of Brazilian things. I like Brazilian women. I like Sepultura, Cavalera era. This is a Cavalera household here. You know, the other guy, he's fine. He's okay. But, like, no, this is Caballero Brothers. We are down with Max and Igor here at RGT headquarters. But in this interview, there's some interesting wording that I really just don't like, because I am someone who tends to pick things apart a little bit when I see something that I feel like can be exploited. So here is what Douglas had to say. Good old Doug Bowser. Just a very a very unpersonable looking person. We're not trying to set a fixed price for all of them. We look at each one and determine the price based on the depth, the development that's gone into the game, and its longevity. For example, here in the US, the price we announced for Mario Kart World was $79.99, but Donkey Kong Bonanza is $69.99. That's a variable price point, and we'll be looking at it as we go along. Now, obviously, the general message is something that we've heard before. It's something that we've talked about before on this channel. But I see things within this that I don't like. That I just do not like the wording and the verbiage of it, because I feel like either they can exploit this or it's clearly not the case. Because if we're doing it by the metrics here, based on depth and the development that's gone into the game, so 2 out of 3 things on this, by that logic, Metroid Prime 4 should be an $80 game. Metroid Prime 4, I guarantee you, has taken longer to develop than Mario Kart World has. And you could say, well, RGT, you don't know that. They could have been working on Mario Kart World the entire time on the Nintendo Switch, and I highly doubt that. And even if that was the case, that is an in-house game development, whereas Metroid Prime 4 was an outsourced game development, and they literally had to scrap the entire thing. So that it's not like because they scrapped it that allegedly Bandai Namco, it's not like Bandai Namco is just not going to get paid. They're going to get paid for the work that they did. So depth and development that's gone into the game, this has to be the longest game that was announced for a system that has not come out when it comes to a first-party Nintendo game. So by that logic, that should be an $80 game. Now you can say, well, what about longevity? You know, Mario Kart World is a much longer game as far as having online features and stuff like that. But then by that logic, what about something like Splatoon? Is the Splatoon 3 going to be an $80 game? Are games that have an online focus or a major online component automatically going to be $80 because of the potential longevity that a user might have? And you have to remember, longevity is very, it differs. I don't know what the word I was looking for there, but subjective. That was the word I was looking for there. You know, that's a very subjective thing. If you play a game and you don't like it, your longevity is going to be much shorter than somebody who maybe really likes the game or wants to speedrun the game or wants to play the game competitively. And I understand that's kind of a little bit of a nitpicky sort of thing. But when you're saying things like that, when you're saying the longevity of the game impacts the price of the game, then an online game should automatically be at your highest tier based on your own words, based on what you are telling people. What about things like RPGs? RPGs are still, you know, some of them do sell very well, you know, and you could say, oh, Zelda's an RPG. It's more of an action game with RPG elements. I'm talking about more so traditional RPG games, but traditionally speaking, RPG games are going to last you much longer than other games will last you. You know, going back to Splatoon and, you know, Splatoon 3. I played Splatoon 3. I played Xenoblade Chronicles X. I have more time on Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition on the Nintendo Switch than I do on Splatoon 3. I played Splatoon 3 for about 30, 40 hours or so, and I understand that there are people that have played it way more than that. But for me, I don't know. It just, you know, it was fine. It was fun. I had a good time with it, but, you know, I was ready to do something else. Whereas the RPG lasted me much longer. It lasted me a longer time frame because of my longevity, because of what I was interpreting. So to blanket things like this, to blanket things and say the depth, the depth of what? You need to be specific with these sorts of things, especially if you're giving these as, you know, messages out to the public, because this is literally the only information we have to go on as to why a game would be $80 versus $70. In the next sentence, you talk about Mario Kart World being 80 and Donkey Kong Bonanza being 70. So by that logic, I'm not going to play Donkey Kong Bonanza as long as I'm going to play Mario Kart World. It didn't take as long to develop the game, and the depth, whatever that means, of the game is not matched by Mario Kart World. You see what I'm getting at here? You're almost putting your games onto a tier system, and instead, and once again, let's get this out of the way. I also understand that there's going to be people in the comments that are going to be like, oh, well, RGT, there's already games like that. You know, there are games that come out that are $40 or $50 as opposed to $60 or $70, and those are considered to be, you know, AA games or something like that. I thought you liked AA games. The thing about that is it's doing the same thing without saying it out loud. You're essentially letting the consumer grade and value that game. A game like Robocop, okay? A game like Robocop was way better than some of the slop that I bought for $70, and I believe that was $60 when it came out. Might have even been $50. It was. I don't think it was a full price game, but I don't know. I could be wrong on that. Now I have to look. Hold on a second. I was right. It was a $60 game, and I had a much better time with that $60 game than I did with a lot of $70 games. And I just enjoyed the savings for whatever reason. Maybe they were unsure that a new Robocop game would sell really well in the modern era. But they didn't come out and say, oh, well, this is because of the longevity and the amount of time we had to develop it. You had to have a license. The Robocop license, you had voice actors in the game. I feel like this was a pretty sizable production for this. I don't like saying the quiet part out loud, especially when you're trying to convince people to spend more money. And I don't necessarily know like what a more proper answer would be. What a more, I guess, diplomatic, for lack of a better term, answer would be to this price point situation. But this is what you created. So because you have created this, you have to answer the questions. You are the one that is giving us the information to go on based on these $80 games. And we'll be looking at it as we go along. It can be taken two ways as well. That means that things could be cheaper or things could potentially get more expensive in terms of the software is concerned. And I don't like that either. I just feel like there's a better way to do it. And I'm not saying that I necessarily have the answers, but I'm also not the head of Nintendo of America. I'm not supposed to have these answers. There's a reason why Doug Bowser is in the position that he's in. There's a reason why Bill Trinan is in the position that he's in. There's a reason why these people are in the positions that they are in, because they are supposed to be the ones that quell fears. They're supposed to be the wordsmiths. And Reggie, for all of his flaws, for all of his problems, because I am definitely not from the church of Reggie Fils-Aimé, at least you felt a little bit better when he talked about things. He might have been lying out of his ass. He might have been trying to sell ketchup popsicle to people in white gloves, but you believed what he said. And I don't think Doug Bowser has that. And I don't think Nintendo of America as a whole has that right now. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of this. You know, it's a very interesting conversation. Some people are fine with $80 games, and like, you know, that's cool. You know, be whatever. But I'm always I'm a cheap person. Like, I like things as cheap as possible. So it's a very interesting conversation, and I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.